You know how we've been doing it? Yeah. Do it a different way. I don't care how. Do it any way you want. I've got what I want, so you do any way you want. I don't care. And say anything you want to. That's okay. All of a sudden, they blossom, they cry, they laugh. Everything starts to happen. Because you said you can do what you want to do. And if I'd known that at the beginning, I would have said it at the start. But usually with my actors, they do know that I feel that way. But sometimes they're trying so hard to help that they are imposing restrictions on themselves that I never wanted. But I have to be able to spot it. And that silly little video playback machine does help me to spot that. So those are the three ways that I use the video machine. And that's the principal way that I direct myself acting.
Do you allow much improvisational work in your film?
Do I what about it?
Allow much improvisational work. Do you encourage it? Do you discourage it? Do you use it a lot?
Everyone uses the word improvisation. Not everyone. There are usually different, about 3 different meanings for the word improvisation. For what it means to me, that is to say, not ad-libbing. You know, ad-libbing is just adding a line here or there because it struck you at the time, what Groucho Marx would do in a movie or on stage. There are speeches, they're set, he doesn't depart from them, but if he feels like saying something else, he ad-libs another line. I don't call that improvisation. If you say, I like the way the scene is going up to page 14, but it's really not good. Keep the characters you have. You all have wonderful characters, you're good at them, but let's say anything that we want to. I would call that an improvisation, but I would usually try to whisper little things into the actor's ears so that they had a goal. It's not just who can think up the most clever line. As soon as an improvisation becomes intellectual, it really is a contest between actor-writers. Who can come up with the cleverest, the most profound, or the funniest line, and get a charge from the crew who laugh, or from the other actors, or from the director. That's not improvisation either. That's just thinking of writing, but instead of putting it down with your pen. Improvisation is an emotional process. It means you're not concerned about the quality of the writing. You cannot be concerned about the quality of your writing because you're acting. You mustn't be worried about how it's going to come out or if it furthers the plot or makes a better movie. You can only say, I am this character in this situation and we're doing an improvisation and I can say anything, even if it's boring, especially if it's boring, because it's not going to be filmed. We're only trying to solve a problem in the script. In that case, the actors can go on and improvise. From that improvisation, which I only do if there's a problem, because if I spend a year and 2 months writing 4 drafts of a script, I don't want to go on the floor and say, now let's say anything that we feel like saying. You know, I told you in the 4th draft I work on each word, so it'd be crazy to throw them out. Improvisation is a tool. It's a hammer, a chisel, a file, a saw, a screwdriver. If everything is fine, you don't use it. If there's something wrong, you say, what do I need? I need a screwdriver. So you get it. Well, that's what improvisation is. If something is wrong and it's not making sense in the middle of the scene, so you say, let's improvise. I don't improvise on camera. Don't waste the cameraman's time or the actor's time and lighting time. I say, everyone go out, please. Just leave me the actors here, and so we'll improvise. And from the improvisation, always the continuity man or woman is there. And as soon as someone says something in the improvisation that is better for the scene, better for the character, funnier, or requires a prop, I always have the prop man stay by during improvisations. I just nod like that, and so they can go on, get a picture. Remember, he said, oh, if you'll have the pitcher, go on, pretend you've got the pitcher of water, or whatever it would be. Pretend you have the flower pot, pretend you have a pen. Oh, if I had a scissors, I could, you've got a scissors, you'll have it in 1 hour. Just go on. So the prop man and the continuity girl, or man, are always there. And if a particular line is good, motion to her, writes down. I say, okay, what have we got? Then she reads back the continuity, and you've got maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 gems of things. Sometimes it can lead, if you're in rehearsals, not shooting yet, to a whole different conception of the scene. Then I'd go home that night and rewrite the scene. But I'm talking about improvisation during shooting, which is what I think the question was addressed. I don't like to do it, but if it's necessary, then I will do it. But only under those circumstances. Once it's down and everyone knows what we learned from the improvisation, then we go back to doing it. Because for me, the improvising comes in the emotional life, not in the words.
Has your approach to writing changed since you directed, and then since you had the feeling what it was like to direct?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Well, I'm much tougher on myself as a writer now. I think for the better. It makes it more difficult for me to write because I'm not so quick on the draw with the pen anymore. I used to bam, 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 and I'd be writing and writing and writing. And now I say, yeah, I can do it, but when the director looks at it, if he doesn't like it, it's going to go out. So, of course, I knew in Sherlock that I was directing it, but I was much easier to please then. And I don't... now...
You said you find yourself arguing while the director, getting mad at you.
Yes, the writer argues with the director. The actor is way in a corner, says, please, may I speak? The writer argues with the director, but the director always wins. The director has to win. If the writer presents a good argument for the dramatics of the scene, the tension in the scene, the story points, the character development, if he's a good director, he should listen. If it comes to, I hesitate, but I'll say it, if it comes to when you know that you're right and you're not fighting for your, what Bergman calls his little darlings, which he thinks are the first thing that have to go. If you're not fighting for that, but you're fighting for the heart and soul of the character that you've written, or for the meaning, the theme of the picture, then you have to fight all the way and take it. I don't know, get into a slugfest or whatever, but hopefully that won't happen, and there's, I think, enough protection built in. Well, there's not enough, but the Writers Guild is getting stronger in that area. But if you have a good director, that director would be crazy not to listen to you as a writer. But in the end, the director is responsible for the whole film, and to put together not just the script that you've written in your conception, but to be thinking about the lady in the 8th row on a hot afternoon in Kansas City who's going to be watching that movie, and what story is she seeing at that moment? He's got to be thinking about that all the time. Not about how long it took you to write that page or that speech, or how much it is like your little boy or your aunt or your mother. Don't you realize how perfect it is? And the director can't be concerned with those things. So naturally there's going to be differences of opinion. But the director has to win. Unless I'm only writing and not directing, then the writer can.
When you're writing or directing, does any part of you very much be concerned with commercialness as opposed to artistic, or is it some blend, or just the artistic aspect of the film?
Well, that's the most difficult question that you ask. Somebody's, it's a tough one. I'll tell you how I think it is ideally. Ideally, for those of you who want to write for movies and for television, you have the same wonderful blessing that actors have, which is that you don't have to worry that much about your soul. Am I selling out for commerciality? Because there really is no such thing as a great actor who everyone hates, thinks stinks, and no one will give a job to. Well, it may be tough to get a job because of the uniqueness, like Geraldine Page had such a difficult time starting on lots of actors. Gene Wilder, for one. But sometimes they just don't know what category to put you into. But what I'm saying is, if you're on the screen or on the stage and you're wonderful, that wonderfulness is commercial. It means that other people, if one person thinks you're wonderful and 8,000 think that you're boring, you can say, I could satisfy them, but I'm holding out for artistic reasons. Well, we don't have to face that problem. I do think that painters have to face that problem, I think anyone in the graphic arts will face it in a way that writers for, I think novelists have to face that problem. And I think that you could write a great novel and it doesn't sell that well, and 10 years later, see people start to claim it a minor classic and then a major classic, and then when you're dead, they give you the posthumous Pulitzer Prize or the Nobel Prize or whatever. But in the movies, there's no such thing as a wonderful, great. No, I shouldn't say there's no such thing, but it very rarely happens that there's a magnificent movie that no one likes. So the answer, there are movies that because of the subject matter and because of the time that they were released, might not be commercial successes, even though they were wonderful films. That does happen, and that's heartbreaking. And there's always a few each year, but I'm saying in general, we, all of us, don't have that major problem that that someone painting, for instance, might have, because if you want to be funny, if you say, I want to be a comedian, if you're funny, people will laugh. If you can't say that he's a magnificent comedian, but people don't find him funny. It doesn't happen that way. I do think, now that I labored that point, I do think that there are certain decisions that are made in the filming that are, I wouldn't call them commercial decisions, I would say economic decisions. And it might be that artistically, it should happen that you see this shot from a helicopter and you go along the trenches in World War I and you wind your way around and then a flock of birds comes by and they blend into the poplar trees that are, and it's beautiful, but they say that's going to cost $287,000. And yes, we like it. We like it, but we just can't afford it. Can't you rewrite that? And if you can't, I'm afraid we'll have to find someone else who can. Well, those are just the practical considerations of writing for television and writing for movies, and they have to be faced. The better you are, the more they'll bend money to suit your artistic dreams. But you do have to think. My teacher always told me that when you run out of imagination, then you have to use money. And I do believe that that money is very often an excuse for a lack of imagination. In the movies, there are certain things just by the conception of the movie that you're going to have to spend a lot of money on. And there are, I don't know, I've answered that. Unless you want to ask anything specific about that, that's as much as... You can go on and on about commercial reality and all of that, but that's what I have to say about it.
Which of the movies have you been in, not the ones you've directed, have you personally liked the best? Just enjoyed making or feel was your best work?
Those are two different questions. The Young Frankenstein was the most enjoyable of any film I've done.
Why is that, just working with...
Well, it's for lots of reasons, I suppose. It was the first time that a script that I'd written and conceived of was up on the screen. I had a long working relationship with Mel Brooks, and we had worked on the second, third, and fourth drafts of Young Frankenstein together, so it was like giving birth to a child. It was one of the best comedy casts assembled, and I thought in maybe 15, 18 years. And everyone enjoyed each other's company and had a great respect for the talents involved. And no one wanted to leave when it was over. And that was just from the point of view of enjoyment. I had artistic freedom. I was playing a character I enjoyed. I had the kind of comedy that I like to do. I have a particular affection for Start the Revolution Without Me, because it was the first part in a film on that grandiose scale, on French chateaus and handmade costumes in London and wigs and all of that, and I like the script and I like the cast. And I have a very particular affection for Crux or Fortune. I look at the film now and I think that in that film I think I gave a good performance. I don't think that the film holds up, but I think that there are beautiful moments in it. And for my own work as a director in Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother and World's Greatest Lover, I have favorite scenes. I wouldn't compare those two experiences as whole movies with Young Frankenstein, but the enjoyment of having written a scene and acting in the scene and directing the scene and seeing on the screen the next day what you thought of a year and a half ago when you were writing alone, the colors and the light coming in from the window and all of the little subtle things, and suddenly there it is, and they said, here's a few $1 million and you can do it. It's a great satisfaction to direct something and have it written.
Is it always very much different than when you first sat down to write it? You wrote the script and all of a sudden you see what you wrote is just usually completely different than you visioned it, or sometimes very similar? Or?
I think that most writers or most directors would tell you that it's very different. For me, it hasn't been. When it works, I say, yeah, that's what I expected, that's what I wanted. When it doesn't work, I haven't usually seen it right away. It takes me about a year. It's too difficult to assess the work right away. It takes me a year. I can see Sherlock fairly clearly now. I can't see World's Greatest Lover that clearly. But if you would mention any particular scene in those two films, and including Young Frankenstein, I would say that's what I had in mind when I wrote it. That's what I pictured.
When you go back and you act in a film, is it difficult for you to contain yourself to just an actor since you've written?
I thought it would be, and it wasn't. I've only done it one time. That was on Silver Streak. And I had a very understanding director, a kind man who didn't have his ego bound up with whose idea was it, which was very important. He had Richie Pryor, he had Jill Clayburgh, he had me, and he wasn't that concerned with what was the most important thing for me, which was finding the physical life of the scene. That's the most important, because if the physical life of the scene, which is to say the staging, but I'm trying to exclude business, I meant going back to Stanislavski, the psychological physical actions, that everything that you do physically has a reason. It comes from the story, from character, from situation. Finding that, and to find it, especially as a comic actor, to be able to find what I want to do physically in the scene that will help the words to come out, to help me to be funny in the way I want to be funny, realistically funny. He left me alone in that, and I didn't ever wish, I don't like the way he's lighting it, I wish I could light the scene, I wish I could operate the camera, I wish I could tell those actors not to do that. I did have my say-so with actors I was working with, because when we found it, we talked very freely with each other. So I didn't have any of those frustrations. I would like to have edited it. I would have edited it differently, Silver Streak, but I'm not talking about good or bad, I'm just saying I would have edited it differently, and then I felt something, but not during the shooting. I didn't say, if I only were directing it.
What was it like to work with Richard Pryor?
Well, I hadn't met him before, and I had great respect for him, and I hugged him on the first day I met him, and he hugged me back warmly, and we hit it off, and I was shocked that he was an actor and not a comedian, which is to say that he changed from take to take. I thought he would find what he wanted to do, preconceive what I would call bedroom acting. You think it up in your bedroom the night before, and then stick to it, and it would never change. And it wasn't so at all. He changed with every take, no matter how many we did. That was a big surprise.
Changed lives, or just changed acting?
Changed in his performance wasn't the same. Lines, did you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's actual, or just
sometimes, but not so much the lines. Just that if you are listening and you are watching, then how you do a scene just from looking at the other people, the other person in front of you is going to change. And should change from take to take. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be an enormous one, but in one you might laugh, in another you might cry. He was an actor in that sense, that he didn't just say, I'm funniest by saying it this way. He concentrated on what was happening, not how he was going to do it. In that he was very naive. Sometimes he didn't have a clue how he was doing it, but he did know what he was doing. The only thing I objected to was his moodiness. Sometimes he'd, after being loving for so long, he'd come in very moody, and I think he was sad. He wouldn't say hello. Then 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's laughing, joking, kissing, hugging. I say, you can't do that to me. I don't want your kisses now. What happened when I had to play that big scene at 10 o'clock this morning, and I thought, well, somebody said something to Richie, and you were, he said, yeah, I know, well, and when I got to know him a little better, there were reasons why. I think some of the things later on after Silver Streak, I don't know him now. I only knew him during the filming. He's got his own demons, and we all do. I have mine. And they showed themselves, but it was a privilege to work with him in that film.
I think that film had a lot of kind of special feelings with it. Most films don't have a special light comedy. And it's very hard to get together. Is that the result of all your talents together? Or, I mean, you rarely see something like some wonderful moments. The part where he was applying, you were applying trying to be black in that scene, and black. Was that in that improv? Was that all?
No.
Well scripted.
No. As a matter of fact, we almost didn't shoot that scene. I had read that. I assume that most of you have seen Silver Streak, but I don't know why I should assume it. But it was a big hit, so somebody must have gone to see it.
How many people have seen Silver Streak? Just right.
Okay, well, so there's a scene, and I read it. We have to get out. I have to disguise myself as black, and it's done with shoe polish, and go into the men's room in the railway station. And I had said, I thought that if it wasn't Richie Pryor in that part, that was going to be a sticky scene. And fortunately, the 20th Century Fox felt the same way, and got Richie, and everything was fine. And I thought, well, he wants to do it, and he's never mentioned anything. We were in Toronto, Canada. It was about the 4th or 5th week of shooting. And we had the first rehearsal for the next morning when we were going to shoot it. We had it about 5 o'clock that night or 6 o'clock that night. And he got so sad during it, and he wasn't talking. And we walked back to the hotel together, and I said, what is the matter? He says, no, it's nothing. And I said, well, if you want to talk later on, then call me up. And about 45 minutes later, he called me on the phone. He said, can I come up and talk to you? I said, sure. So I said. So he came in the room, and he said, I think a lot of black people are going to feel sad after seeing that scene. And I said, why? He said, I don't know, but there's something wrong with that scene, and there's nothing we can do about it. I said, don't say there's nothing. Don't sit and cry in your beer and say there's nothing. We can. I know people, and the director is a very reasonable guy. I know the producers. I know the head of Fox. But you've got to say, it took about 2 hours pulling teeth. And finally, he realized what it was that was bothering him. One of the big things, was that a white man came into the men's room and saw me dressed with shoe polish on and accepted me right away as black. Sure, that's the way niggers behave. That's the way they all talk. That's the way they all move. That's the way they all look. And there was no question about it. He said it should be a black man who comes in, and I don't even fool him for a second. And he says, I don't know what you're doing, man, but you gotta keep time. Nice man. Well, it was an enormous difference. And the second thing was, he didn't want to be telling me how to behave. like a crazy nigger. I said, well, wait a minute, where am I going to get it from? And it was his idea that I'm listening to the radio and I hear this disc jockey and I'm imitating all those things, and that when he goes out, he says, just keep time, good luck. And he goes out and I'm practicing and doing all those things, and when I come out jiving and meet him, he takes one look and starts to walk the other way. That's why, you know, and I said, I don't know if we're going to get past the detectives. They said, don't worry about the detectives, I just hope we don't run into any Muslims. And so there should be a shock to him. Well, that changed really the content of the scene, the conception of the scene. Although in lines themselves, it wasn't so different. I just adapted them a little bit. But those 2 points were really big as far as conception were concerned, and they could have turned it into an embarrassment. And so he was right. My only complaint was it took 2 hours to get it out of him.
Is that a problem when you're creating your own comedy, if you're going to offend a group or individual by doing something in your film? Is that a consideration?
I certainly think about it. I'm worried about being careful for the wrong reasons. If you just say, I don't want to offend, I don't want to offend, I don't want to offend, if I ever did a movie that offended no one, I'd know it was an artistic failure. It would have to be. If you can please everyone, you've done something wrong. Because how can we all like the same? When a majority enjoys and likes, then you know that you've hit something that's solid and that has hit the mainstream of humor or thought. But someone's bound to be offended by the farting scene in Blazing Saddles. They just have to. So you say, well, let's cut the farting scene. Well, you cut the farting scene and you cut the reason for Blazing Saddles existing. That was not mean the one scene, but yes, I do mean the one scene. That typified what the whole movie was about. The kind of movie it was, the style of the movie it was. I'm talking about one fart, more or less.
When you cast a film, you know exactly who's going to be the film you're writing and directing. Do you rewrite your script much or change it?
Well, wait a minute, you mean when I write, do
No,
I...
that is, if you've written a script and then you're about to make it, and all of a sudden you know exactly who all the characters are, who's going to be in the film.
I would try, I would try as much as possible to be writing the script for very specific people, actors.
That's unusual.
Yeah, it's unusual, and it's not a luxury that we often have. But in Young Frankenstein, when I was given the assignment, I knew that I was writing for Marty Feldman to be Igor, or Igor. I knew that I would be playing Dr. Frankenstein, and I knew that Peter would be playing the monster. I knew that going in. I didn't know about Cloris Leachman and Madeline Kahn, and things did change when we started working on them, when we knew who it was. In Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, I said to Madeline Kahn, I'm writing a film, it's called Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother. It'll take place in London in 1895. This is generally what it's about, but I don't know anything to do with the character yet, except that I want her to be in music hall. Tell me if you want to do it now, because if you don't, I'm going to be writing it a completely different way. And you're taking a chance because I've never directed a film before. And she said, yes, I do. So I wrote every line in the film for her, and I wrote every line in the film for Marty Feldman to be playing Sergeant Sackert. So, and I wrote for myself again. In World's Greatest Lover, that was a strange one. You'd think that I knew more, but actually I didn't know. I didn't know who would be playing what parts in it. But I did rewrite a lot in rehearsal for the actors whom I cast. And sometimes in just interviewing actors, I don't read actors, I don't like to read actors, and I've been through that enough times myself, and that's the area of my confidence that I can tell from talking with someone in a room, whether or not they can or can't, or right or wrong. Sometimes peculiar problems, accents, things like that, a dialect that you say, can they do it? Okay. But in general, I don't. But I'll have someone come in for one part, and I'll say, no, they'd be right for the guard. So what do you mean, the guard? The guard is a man. You're talking about, I said, yeah, well, let's make her a woman. And what? I'll then go home, from the casting and rewrite the part for the specific actor who came up to see me that day. But in one that I've abandoned now, Haunted Honeymoon, I had 14 specific parts for 14 actors that I knew, from Frankenstein and Sherlock and from World's Greatest Lover. I have a group of actors, and I would always prefer to do it that way. It's not always possible, but if you know, well, here's a little hint for you. If you want to give me a quarter on the way out. You can do what I'm saying, even if you don't know who's playing the part. By thinking of an actor who you'd like to play the part, but you mustn't say, I'm hoping that they'll do the part. That's not what I mean. I'm just talking about to help you write a character. And I find that this works mostly best with dead actors. If you say, for instance, when I was asked in The Little Prince, the director asked me my advice about the casting of the pilot. And I said, well, the person I see, I don't think you can get. Tell me, we can get anyone to tell me. And I said, Leslie Howard. Well, they couldn't get him. But what I'm saying is that, for instance, in World's Greatest Lover, I didn't know about Dom playing the part of Adolphe Sitz, but I was thinking of Adolphe Marjou. And I knew that he couldn't play the part, but it helped me in the writing about what kind of character, what kind of words would be used. Does he have a fast rhythm, a slow rhythm? What kind of jokes would he? What kind of excitement? Then when Dom was cast, because there were 3 parts, I said, he said, which part? I said, you tell me. And he told me Sitz, the Adolphe Sitz, the part I said, I thought, okay. And then I rewrote for Dom. And he's very good at saying, how about if I say this, and this, and this, and this, and so on. But I find that working with a dead actress is wonderful.
I thought maybe we'd show this other clip and then take a very short break afterwards and have some questions and answers from you. Bruce, can you show that other clip?
Any people, no nakedness, and that it should be a very risque scene. It's all done with words, and only the suggestion, ruffle of the bed and hearing things, and I wanted the dialogue in that to be as funny as possible. And unlike movies in general, what I was saying before, in this case, it was only the words that counted. And I don't say I did it as an exercise. I really did it because what I was interested in was the second half, when it got serious. But I said, I can't get to that unless I give the audience a good laugh. And
I was reading over the cards. An awful lot of the cards was something relating to you doing a lot of different things, writing, acting, directing. Like one of the cards asked, which of the roles you prefer best and you enjoy doing most?
Well, I've been acting since 13 years old, and that's all I thought I ever wanted to do. But when I started to write, it opened up another area, not of my career only, but of my life. And I started to feel that I wouldn't be able to do without the writing. And then I started directing on to protect what I'd written. And your question is, which do I like the most? And I would have to tell you that I think I like the directing more than anything else. I don't mean that I'm better at it, which is possible, but I think I take more instinctively to it. And I have a sense of satisfaction with the directing that I don't usually have as strong as in the writing and the acting.
It's a question that says, how do you think your comedy acting experience has affected your comedy writing? Would you be a worse writer if you hadn't acted first?
Big one. Who asked that question? Are you an actor? Or a writer?
Basically writer.
I probably wouldn't... Read it to me again. I want to hear exactly how it says.
How do you think your comedy acting experience has affected your comedy writing? Would you be a worse writer if you hadn't acted first?
Yeah, I wouldn't be a writer if I hadn't acted first. That's for sure. I started out. I wrote a few things when I was 14, 15 years old, but I never thought of myself as growing up to be a writer. All I wanted to do was to be an actor. And I studied very seriously, and I was at the Actors Studio, and I studied for 18 years for just acting. But when I started to work in the movies, I found the first one was even Bonnie and Clyde, which was my first film. I said, I know why they want me, and I was lucky that Arthur Penn had seen me in a play on Broadway and asked me to do that part. But it wasn't quite right, and at least not for the way I wanted to act it. And I didn't know whether you're supposed to tell anyone that you want to change it, to ask permission to change but to the, or leave out something, add something new in. I just did it because it wasn't that big a part, and I thought I'll take a chance. And if they tell me you're not allowed to do that, then I'd know. So I just did it, and it worked out swell. And I found out that that was a fairly common practice. At Start the Revolution Without Me, I was 3,000 miles away from New York. I was in France, and the writers had gone home, and the director and I, after 6 weeks of working on the film, I don't know if you have seen that, how many of you have seen that picture, but and I'd worked 6 weeks on one part, on the part of Claude, and the shy peasant boy. Then I suddenly had to switch to Philippe, the aristocrat, and I didn't realize that I was getting into the real meat of the whole movie. I thought I was taking it for the other part, and came about that the scenes weren't working with the character that I had found in the rehearsals, but I didn't know about it until 6 weeks later, and we had to rewrite a lot of stuff right on the spot. So the director and I would go off, and we wouldn't write a whole new scene, but we would take a scene that had a premise, and most of the dialogue was changed, and I found that I was pretty good at it. And I liked it. The lines came out, funny stuff, and things because of what I was doing as an actor that made sense, and whereas the old script wouldn't have made sense that way. And so it gave me a certain amount of confidence. And the next film, Quacks Their Fortune as a Cousin in the Bronx, the author was thousands of miles away, and you start to rehearse a scene, and it's not working, and somebody has to do something about it. And so I started to write doing that, and after a while, when I did do my own work, my first script on my own, I realized I would never have done that if I hadn't that confidence that comes from having been in the movie and seen a scene that just like you, when you go to a movie, you're watching a scene. Well, as an actor, I watched myself, and I saw the scene with lines I had written, and people were laughing at it, and it gave me confidence that I could do it some more. But the biggest thing, it was that if you said, do you have confidence in writing because of your comedy training, comedy experience in acting, I might fudge, but when you say comedy writing being helped by the comedy acting, I would say that for the same reason I knew that, had confidence that something was funny as an actor, that was the same reason I had confidence that something was funny as a writer. It came from the same well. And if I hadn't been laughed at, and as a kid, I hope in the right way, when I was trying to be funny, first by my mother, and then by the kids in the class, and then by high school and college and summer stock and so on, if I hadn't made people laugh as an actor, I would never have tried it as a writer. And the main thing that I started out doing at the time, when I wasn't thinking about story and structure and characters, but just whether something was funny or not, was picturing how I would be doing it as an actor. And if I would laugh out loud, then I would say, yes, they're going to like that. But that was because I saw the performance. If I didn't know the actor who was doing it, I think I would have been much shyer.
All right, there's a couple of questions here referring to use of physical comedy, slapstick, and how you script your scene. And basically non-verbal, like maybe something like the scene you saw or other scenes like that.
What's the first one?
How do you script a scene that's basically non-verbal, that has a lot of physical comedy? How do you write that down? Use it that directing scene? You give that up to the actor?
Well, Stanislavski started out by having months and months of preparation before he would enter rehearsals for a production. And he even, in a certain period in his life, had notes on almost every line of a production that he wasn't well enough to direct. He was sending it in from a vacation spot. And in the last years of his life, he decided that he didn't want to do any preparation. He wanted to start even with the actors. And he said that the most important thing for him as a director was psychological, physical actions. By that he meant physical actions, not opening and closing a door or lighting a cigarette, but some physical action that would have psychological implications to it. And I remember reading that when I was a kid, and it stuck in my brain, although I don't think I really understood it the first few times I read it. But later on in my work, especially in the movies, I always tried to find one and hopefully two physical actions for each scene, psychological physical actions for each scene in the movie. I'm talking now as an actor, so that months later when I come to that scene, and I haven't read it for all that time, those physical actions will guide me along the path that I had decided I wanted to go months before. And they became so important to me as I started working in films that it was almost the emotional things, and I won't mention learning lines because that has nothing to do with acting, and that I usually do the night before, if then. But I won't go into that anymore because you're not actors, you're writers. But I found more and more that the physical actions were what was the most important to me as an actor. Well, when I started to write, I said, I don't want to leave so many important things, key things, up to what might take place in rehearsal. I want, if it's really that important, and if it really is a guidepost for how the scene should be played, I know enough I'm not going to tell an actor, you act this way, because I wouldn't want to impose that on an actor. But if I have what Stanislavski called the psychological physical action written into the script, and if it was correct, then I would have some kind of a guarantee that the scene would go the way I hoped when I was writing it late at night and with a glass of port and a cigarette and so on. And my answer to your question is that I do think very strongly, even more importantly than the words now, I think of the physical actions. But I don't mean the kind of physical actions that you can only find in a rehearsal. I try to separate what is usually referred to as business from what is the author's intent in the scene. And if the author tries to impose camera angles and how the scene should be shot, what lenses, and also each little thing that the actors are doing is wasting, or she's wasting, her time, because it's not going to work out that way. You're dealing, first of all, usually, with characters that you've invented in your head. And when you deal with live actors and you're on a set, everything changes. And you unless you want a dead script, you have to change with the actors who are performing the part. Otherwise, you're going to get artificial flowers. And they may be flowers, but they're dead. But when you're working with the actual actors and they don't feel comfortable, I'll give you an example. The strongest one, the one that impressed me the most, and everything you always want to know about sex. I expected, the first time working with Woody Allen, I didn't know what kind of a director. I didn't know if he would be very aggressive. He didn't say boo to me. He said, did you get coffee? He said that first thing in the morning. I said, yeah. Then about 11 o'clock in the morning, he would say, do you want some tea or anything? Yeah. So far we haven't talked about the script or the character or anything. I'm acting, the cameras are rolling. Then about 1, he says, you know where to go for lunch? 3 o'clock, 3:30, he says, you want tea? I said, no, I have some, thanks. And at 6 o'clock, he says, I see you tomorrow morning. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow morning. The only other thing he said to me, one day, I think it was the first afternoon, he said, oh, by the way, if you don't like any of these lines, just change them. That he put on the same level with the coffee and the tea and the I thought, that's a peculiar thing to be saying to me. From the most frivolous to the most important. If you don't like these lines, change them. It's because he knew what the situation was. He knew why he had hired me, which, for those of you who've seen everything you always wonder about sex, I fall in love with a sheep. Well, he wanted someone who would play it straight and really believe that they fell in love with the sheep and carry it out. So to him, the exact lines really were not that important, as long as the events that he had written did take place. And to do, in addition to the events, certain key physical actions. So that was the first time I came across a director who was more concerned with what physical things you would be doing than with what words you would be saying. When I started to write and direct, Young Frankenstein was the first one for writing, but Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, the one you just saw now, that little scene from, that was my first time directing and writing. And I used to think that, I remember the first time I'd written any script, if God would only photograph the pages, you could just put the pages up on a screen and people would weep. You didn't actually have to film it. The words were so magnificent that there was no point in... And I thought, if a scene had 100 beautiful lines, then what more would people want? Then I realized, and the reason why I asked Gary to show in particular the chocolate scene was accidentally, on purpose, I don't know. But the chocolate scene, which was very easy for me to write, was, I think, one of the best written scenes in the movie. On the other hand, I wouldn't really have called it a scene that I wrote. I mean, I would have said, yes, I wrote that scene, but I would have said, you don't want to look at that scene, that's not writing. Here, let me show you this scene from Sherlock. And all the words and the pages of dialogue and all of that. And I've been having this discussion lately because I'm supervising the writing of a script now. Not a script that I have written, but that I'll be acting in. And it always comes down to the same thing with writers, to a greater or lesser degree, which is how difficult is it to let go of your little darlings, the things that meant more to you than anything that day, those words that you thought up. And I find now that, I'm sure you've heard this before from Hitchcock, who said he was tired of watching photographs of people talking. That's why he didn't go to the movies much anymore. That you use words if there's no other way to say it. That's not to say that words are bad, that the art of screenwriting is the art of not using words. But I think that for those of you who have studied and seen a lot of silent movies, I hope you understand why it was the golden age of comedy and why few movies since sound came in could ever match them, because movies are a visual medium. Unlike the theater, where the word is the primary tool and what you see is secondary, in movies, what you see is primary and what you hear is secondary. I shouldn't say hear, but what words you use, secondary. And what question are we talking about? I haven't talked enough about that one.
a question here about plot. It said in comedy, how important is plot? In plot, for instance, in comedy, do you discard a gag for the plot, or vice versa?
Always comes character first and situation, or situation and character. I prefer it to be. Tolstoy and me prefer it to be. That first should come character and situation, and then whatever happens in the scene, if it's a dramatic scene, if it's a poetic scene, if it's a comedy scene, if it's a farcical comedy scene, if it's a burlesque comedy scene, if it's pastoral, historical pastoral, whatever happens, if it doesn't come from character and situation, you're way out on a limb. It had better be a good joke. And even so, when I say better be, I mean to get by with the general audience. But you're not going to, in the end, get by, because an audience knows when they've been led down the garden path. And if you get in the habit of having the comedy come from the characters and the situations, you'll have much richer comedy. And if you get in the habit of writing as funny a line as you can and only thinking later about well, would she say it? Would he say it? Would that ever happen here? You know, you may win the laugh and lose the war, because you'll lose the picture if the audience isn't concerned with the characters that they're seeing in front of them.
The question says, how do you develop your ideas for plot? Also, how do you develop your own jokes and punchlines from inception to final scripts? Do you try out your jokes on friends?
Okay. Stuff, but let's go slowly. That's about at least 3. What's the first part?
It says, how do you develop your ideas for plot?
I'll tell you quite honestly that plotting is the most difficult thing for me, and it's the thing that I know that I'm the weakest at. My strong point in writing is character. Bizarre characters, but characters, and getting the characters into peculiar situations. The hardest part for me is turning what could be a very amusing, I don't like amusing, I don't even want to write amusing, a very funny 28 minutes into an hour and a half movie. Because it's not, if there's talent there, and you have a comic talent, and a natural ease in finding characters who have an original voice, to do something that will sustain for 30 minutes is not that difficult. But the problems of writing for a movie, now I should ask, I don't know if you're talking about television too, because I'm not addressing myself to the questions of writing for television, and perhaps everything I'm saying now should be taken, I mean, you shouldn't take me so literally if you're talking about writing television scripts, but I'm thinking now of a minimum of 90 minutes of an hour and a half script. It's very difficult to have the audience asking the most important question that a writer must know that they're asking, which is, what is going to happen next? And they'll indulge you, they'll give you the first 10 minutes, they'll give you the first 15 minutes, but eventually, whatever kind of movie it is, they are going to want to be caught up in the character or in the plot, or hopefully both. And you have to do more than just be funny for 10, 12, 14-minute sketch pieces at a time. You have to have a story that's going to make them want to care what's going to happen, even up to the last frame. And it's very difficult. So I'm saying that for plotting, in my first 3, Young Frankenstein, I had Mary Shelley to go by as an outline. And it's a wonderful story. And go back to Transylvania, and then basically the first Frankenstein story was really the only one that was ever done in the movies. It's the recreation of life and creating a monster and having the monster turn against, and then in the case of Young Frankenstein, willing to give up my own life so that, well, that's a powerful story. And whether it would be done in dramatic terms, as Mary Shelley did, or in comic terms, the way Mel and I did in Young Frankenstein, it's still going to hold. In Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, I thought that I had a strong story, and going in, and I felt, when I see it now, that I had a story that was strong in my head, but it was amusing. It was a successful picture commercially, I think because there were enough scenes that made the audience laugh. But I don't think that it was, I know that it wasn't the kind of plot that I would be satisfied with now, because I had mixed styles so much. And in The World's Greatest Lover, I did have the story. I had a stronger story than I did in Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother. But I won't say if I were to criticize it, but if I were to observe what may have confused the audience, is that what I set out to do intentionally, which was a mixture of styles. I wanted to tell a very tender love story and counterpoint it, as you would in music, with slapstick comedy. Everything I loved from W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers and Mel Brooks and mostly Chaplin and Keaton. Big belly laughs. Not what I'm best at, not the much more subtle. But I wanted it to be outrageous humor, banana peel humor, against that texture against very, very tender story of this young woman emerging, because I always regarded my wife, as more of the protagonist of the story than me. So now when I'm writing, I'm taking a lot more time to think about what the story is. And if I don't think I'm so good at plotting, I'm hiring writers to work on ideas that I have, and that I may work on, supervise or rewrite or whatever. But if it's a particular kind of script, like one I'm working on now, I say this requires too much intricate plotting and I'm not that good at it. So I want another objective eye. I want someone who may not be that good at dialogue, but who's wonderful at construction. And whereas I would have thought it was a sin to say help me before, I realize now that it would be folly not to. Now, what's the second part?
How do you develop your jokes and punchlines from inception to the final script?
Well, I take my carrots. That's it's really an almost impossible question. Ask me once more and see if anything strikes a bell. How do I develop
Your
my
jokes and
my
punchlines
jokes?
from inception to final script.
I don't really. I'll tell you what process I work on, because I can't. If I answered that, I'd be answering something that I don't know anything about, because I don't develop. I'll just answer you a different way. My pal, Mel Brooks, taught me to write a first draft in which the full conception is expressed on however many pages it takes. The second draft, if you're going to change the construction, if there are holes in it, if the story doesn't hold up, that's the time. Take an axe and just knock those pillars out, break them, rearrange the whole floor plan before you start building up above the ground. But make sure that the basement is the construction, the outline that you want. The third draft, I concentrate on making each scene and speech within the scene better, sharper. Take out all the excess verbiage. And the fourth draft is looking at words. Is that word actually necessary? What if you took out those two speeches? If it's just as good without the two, then why put the two in? If it's only because you liked them and sounded good when you read it back to yourself, it's not reason enough. If you can make a cut in a script, go from page 14 to page 17 and a half, and you read it to someone and they say, sounds wonderful. You said, but you didn't miss the cut? Don't you remember you read it once before, 2 months ago, and that lovely scene that... No, I didn't miss it. It seemed to flow right. Then you can be pretty sure that it didn't belong in there. And so I always go through those 4 stages. Now, I don't want to encourage by saying I don't, by saying that I do work on punchlines, because in my mind I don't. But there is a process that maybe is what you mean. I say, this is funny to me, and I think the scene is right, but this should be very, very funny, and I do test out on people constantly as I write. That was from an earlier question. And if I see that people smile, but they're not laughing, then I might say, there's something wrong with the last line in the scene, or there's something wrong when I say to her, and then she answers back, I expected that everyone would be screaming with laughter. So then I might think about what you're referring to as a punchline. I'm a little squeamish about the word punchline because it seems like writing gags, and I don't like to write gags.
Question says, you create a history for the major characters before you begin your first draft.
No, I don't. I'm not saying that it's wrong to, and I'm not saying that that other writers whom you would respect very much don't do it. I just don't, because I couldn't write a character unless it had already been born somewhere. I don't ever say, what could that character be? I start to write, and the character comes out. He's got his own history, she's got her own history, and it comes out, and they talk. I says, funny that she should be talking that way, but that's the way she talks, and that's the way it comes out. Later on, the director in me, reading that script, says, I want to clean up. I don't like that. It's not right. I don't mean to clean up dirty, but maybe that way too. That's true. Sometimes that way. But when I first start to write, the characters come out easily for me, and the day that they stop coming out easily for me, I probably won't write. But I don't intellectualize it, as a lot of in acting classes I got constipated. I studied for so many years, and I was at Herbert Berghoff's studio in New York, and I used to think there was something in acting that taken from Stanislavski called an objective, and there were certain teachers who taught you to write down what your objective was in each scene as an actor. And I think in certain writing courses they do that too. I can understand it more in a writing course, but in acting, I used to think 20 seconds before going on that if only I could think of the right way to say that objective, I would be capable of great acting. And if I came up with a medium objective, I would be mediocre in the scene. And if it was a poorly stated objective, I would be poor in the scene. And it got to the point where I was thinking, even during this scene, about maybe I should rephrase it in my mind of what my objective is. And I remember I was talking to a friend who had just started studying with Lee Strasberg, and he said, well, I have a friend I'm meeting later on tonight who studied with Strasberg for 4 years. Why don't you ask her? So I went along and I met her and I explained my problem. I said, what does Strasberg say about objectives? And she said, well, I've been with him 4 years. I haven't heard him mention it yet. And one day, it was maybe 2 years later, and I'd been studying there, and I heard an actor say how he had worked. He had just come from studying with Uta Hagen. And he said, I just wanted to present to you how I have been working up till now, because this is my first scene for you. This was at the Actors Studio. And Strasberg said, yes, we got it. I saw clearly what your objective was. I saw clearly what the obstacles were. I saw what the actions were that you had chosen to accomplish your objectives. Got it all. And it's just that the way we work, it's a little different. We think, meaning at the Actors Studio, we, Strasberg, think that if the actor is relaxed, if the actor knows who he is, if the actor knows what the situation is in personal terms, not on paper, but to him, to her, what that particular situation means to them. If you do all those things, objectives will arise by themselves, and you don't have to say, what is my objective? Well, that's about acting, and I don't want to go off on that, but I'm trying to relate it to the writing by saying that when I write a scene, I will usually have a conception. I would rather call it an event. This should happen in the scene. But if the characters are alive, I find that objectives usually come in the same way as with the acting by themselves. The question was actually, you didn't mention the word objective, did you? They wanted to know about, how was it stated? Anyway, you understand the point I'm trying to make is I'm terribly afraid to intellectualize a process that shouldn't be. And yet, writing is not the same as acting, and it does have to be more intellectual than acting. But the problem is how to let nature do what it knows to do, and after it's done it, then with your objective eye, look at it and say, it's an interesting scene, but it doesn't further the action. That has to be very objective. That part is, when I say objective, that has to be intellectual. But I don't like to say it intellectual, so I'm saying objective. But I mean, that's your brain telling you, it's not a bad scene, but it doesn't further the action. It's amusing, but it's not really that funny, and so on. But first you should get down what you think is your talent, and what comes. I'll tell you this little sidelight, because it's hard for me not to relate the acting to the writing. I once did a scene at the Actors Studio, and I labored through it. It wasn't a very good scene, and there was one small section where I was going to a refrigerator and opening it up and getting something out, and I said something, and Strasberg said, why did you make so little of that wonderful moment you had with the refrigerator? And I said, well, I knew that moment. I knew that one. I knew that was at the core of my talent, and that I could do blindfolded, and I wanted to work on what was difficult and what I didn't understand. He said, why don't you do it the other way around? And take something you know, even if it's that big, a tiny little thing that you know, and say, I don't know the rest, I don't know, I know I'm supposed to know about who I am and where I'm going and what happened before I came into this room and what's going to happen when I go. But I don't know that. All I know about is how difficult it is to peel an apple when you're trying to talk to someone on the phone and pretending that you're sick or whatever it would be. I understand this little thing about the scene, that when she says, I'm sorry, but I don't love you anymore, and that I understand. So you start out, he was saying, start out with one little thing that you do understand, and it might help you with another little thing. And then those two together might help you with another one. And you're working from strength instead of saying, that's weak, that's baby, I know I can do that. If I'm really diligent, if I'm a really hard worker, I'll take what I don't know beans about. I haven't a clue how I'm going to do it. Otherwise, I haven't done my homework, and I'm not a good student, and all that baloney that we've heard since we're in kindergarten, depending on what school we went to.
It says, how are you as a director to work with?
Wonderful.
You like working with yourself. What problems happen when you're directing yourself? And do you use any special techniques? I guess another part makes a videotape.
Well, I can talk to you very specifically about that, but I don't know how applicable it's going to be to most of the students. So I'll just give you I hope I can confine to a very quick resume. It's very difficult to direct yourself acting, and I found that unlike what I thought, if an actor has a chance to direct himself, I thought surely they're going to spend most of the time directing themselves, and it's just the opposite. You usually, and I've talked to lots of directors who have done this, who are also actors, you want to spend all your time with the other actors, and you want to spend less and less time with yourself because it's not as interesting. It starts to get boring. And I said on my second film, I want to learn from the first time. Hiring another actor to stand in for me and watch and do the things that I was doing didn't work at all. I tried it in England. I got a wonderful actor from the National Theatre. He did it for one day. Marty Feldman and Madeline Kahn didn't know what to do because it wasn't at all the way I was doing it, even though he was imitating my basic actions. Because each time you rehearse something, it should change. Something new should happen. And they would have to know what I was going to do, not what this actor from the National Theatre was going to do. So I gave that up. I did have the video playback machine. And I'll tell you what I learned from it. If a scene is going well, I do the scene. 10 seconds later, I holler, go. I go into a little booth with a black curtain, and I look at the scene. If it makes me laugh out loud, I say, print, good, we go on with the next one. If I don't say that, if something was wrong from looking at the video machine, I break it down to 3 things. Either the script, which is what you'd be concerned with. I say something is wrong. It starts out wonderfully. It's very entertaining. It's rich. Something happens in the middle. I don't know what it is. It always starts on that line, and they go off, and I don't know where, and then it ends up with a bang. And it's wonderful. So I say, everyone, relax, have a cup of coffee. I'll sit with a friend, maybe 2 friends. We'll go over that, and I'll rewrite on the spot. Fix up. I say, well, there's so many words. Of course, that wasn't necessary. So come back. Give them the new lines, say don't bother saying that, don't bother saying that, so on. Fix the script. That's rewriting on the spot. And then look at it again, and if I determine that it was a writing problem, then I can usually fix it. If it wasn't a writing problem, I say no, there's something bogs down in the middle. When he picks up the cane, every time it goes wrong, and I know that the lines are right. I say, something is wrong with the staging. It's artificial. They probably feel it. I'm feeling it. Maybe the actors feel it. The audience certainly isn't getting a story told by what's happening physically. So I go back on the set and I say, forget everything that we did. You can open the way we opened, but after that, do whatever you feel like. Forget where we had the camera and hitting your key lights and all that stuff. Do what you want to do. I don't care what it is. And if it means that because you do something different, you're going to say something different, go ahead. As soon as you say that, usually you'll find that an actor was doing something that really they were too embarrassed. They wanted to help you. They wanted to help me because I had a tough job directing and acting, so they didn't want to say, I'm so uncomfortable when I have to pick up the cane, grab my hat, and also say, hello, darling, what's for dinner, or whatever. So you give them a chance to correct your mistakes as a director and restage it, and that one little section in the middle gets fixed, and also you come up with better lines usually, because with new physical actions usually come new lines. If I say it's not the script and it's not the physical actions, it always comes down to tension. There's nothing wrong with the staging of the scene, there's nothing wrong with the lines, but somebody's tense, and it could be me. I may say I was tense.